Welcome, welcome, one and all. It is 6:01 p.m. and we'll begin our meeting first with a notice that we're being live streamed via Zoom and will be recorded and available on YouTube channel and website for 1 year. So please, if you or you know anybody who wants to revisit tonight, they can. And thank you for being here. I'm Trustee Cernsit Hodge, your president this evening. So let's start with roll call. Trustee Nakatani.
President Cernsit Hodge.
Present.
Trustee Abdoli.
Present.
Trustee Yu. Trustee Katz. And I'm Trustee Nakatani. I'm here.
All right. And now we move to the approval of the agenda, and the board does reserve the right to change the order of any agenda items. Do we have a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved.
I second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, the agenda is approved. Next, we go to our governance norms and inspiration. And Trustee Nakatani is going to present this item this evening. Trustee Nakatani.
Thank you. Well, after watching our rather eloquent fifth graders and middle schoolers, I'm like, oh God, they're more poised than I am. They're more articulate. Geez. But I wanted to talk about honest conversations. And I would say that, and I don't mean to toot our own board's horn, but we don't get to talk about successes. And I would say in the past year, we've done so much work together that that's a success. And one of those things is having honest conversations with each other, which I would say a year ago was tough. It was tough. But we've built capacity. We've done a tremendous amount of behind the scenes work. Right now, a lot of us are engaged in Masters in Governance, which is lengthy Zooms put on the California State Board Association, very lengthy Zooms. But and we're getting, we're pulling from it what is applicable to our school district and what we can use and grow from. So there's a lot of effort that's gone into that. And I just kind of wanted to highlight that. And it's not as simple as, when I took this job, it was like, oh, just always, vote for what is best for students. But it's just not that simple. And if that were, so in order we build capacity with each other, we're able to work better together. We're better, we have honest conversations with our district office, with each other, everything. It's a more effective way of governance. And so thank you, team. That's it.
Thank you, Trustee Nakatani. It's nice to be appreciated. Thank you so much. All right. And now we come to communications to the board. And public, you please have the right to come forward and speak on any items not on the agenda at this time. And I would like to also remind you that any items that you would like to speak on that are on the agenda, we'll give you a heads up that public comment paper, which is over there to your left and is pink, please fill out before we get to the approval of the consent agenda. So we'll remind you. And we do have a public comment this evening on an item not on the agenda. Jill Kaufman and Hawkins Hedrick, please. Thank you coming up to speak about school safety. And you'll have 3 minutes in which to make your comments. And if you could please identify yourself and what school you were with. And, oh, very good. We'll have this. Yes.
Hi, I'm Hawkins, and I'm from Tam Valley Elementary.
I know y'all know me, but I'm Jill Kaufman. I am a parent of this lovely human being next to me. So I'm going to speak for both of us. So good evening. I am going to open up with this statement. This is Mill Valley. Nothing happens here. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that infuriating statement when I've questioned the security of our school campuses. Well, Mill Valley, something did happen here, sadly, at our middle school. And while this incident was very upsetting and violating, thankfully it wasn't the situations that Uvalde, Parkland, or Sandy Hook had to deal with when armed intruders took the lives of so many. This is our wake-up call, Mill Valley. The cries of don't wreck the beauty of our schools with fences and gates or presence of law enforcement or cameras are going to scare our kids. It's over. We no longer live in the world where nothing happens. So let's move forward and prepare for the world that we actually live in. Y'all know me. I have been speaking on this issue now since Hawkins was in TK, okay? I've seen very little movement on this issue. This shouldn't be left up to each individual school to carry out safety measures. I can't tell you enough the confusion, who's responsible for this. Let's figure it out. I am very lucky to have one of the best principals in Lisa Lamar, who has heard our concerned voices and is doing everything she can, but she can only do so much. We need more. I am beyond grateful for our new leadership and Dr. Kaufman, who views school safety as a top priority, but she can only do so much. We need more. I am now looking to you, the board members who ran on this issue. And if you remember, you said it was a top priority. It's been a year. We need more. But most importantly, I'm asking of parents to support whatever measures our district comes up with instead of arguing about beauty and innocence over safety. I believe we can have both. A message was sent, the incident at the middle school. Let's listen and respond. The time is now to keep our kids safe, and that should be our top priority. This is Mill Valley. Something can happen here, but let's work together to make sure it doesn't. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Okay, thank you, Hawkins, for being here. Thank you very much. All right, and no other public comments, Sid? Okay, at this time. All right, well, now we will move to our CSEA partners and Pat Barron. I am not seeing Pat here. Do we see Pat here, or is she on Zoom? Pat, I'm sorry. He may be on Zoom, sorry. Pat, if you're on Zoom and you're under a different name, Sid will look for you. Well, we'll keep looking. I guess in the meantime, let's welcome our Mill Valley Teachers Association partners, Aaron Frazier and Julie Bremer, will provide us an update. Welcome, welcome, ladies.
Okay. This says on, but it is a red light, which makes me feel nervous, but I can hear myself. Okay. Hi. Thanks for having us. It was a very exciting week at school with Halloween parades and celebrations all across the district on Tuesday and a rich professional development day for staff on Wednesday. MBTA members engaged in a full day of learning at MVMS, which included morning sessions on vertical and horizontal articulation and an afternoon of choice-based PD sessions. MBTA members appreciated the opportunity to pick sessions and presenters that interested them and that they felt would best meet their current teaching and learning needs. MBTA members would like to thank Superintendent Kaufman, Laura Myers, Kate Sprague, Sid Amaral, Anna Russell, and all other administrative and DO staff who worked really hard to make the day a success. We particularly appreciated the morning coffee and Grilly's lunch that was provided. Having the opportunity to eat together as a staff felt like a welcome return to pre-COVID practices. It also made us feel valued and appreciated. A little salad goes a long way, so thank you so much. You might be wondering how professional development is determined in Mill Valley. Of course, our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Superintendent, and other administrators play a critical role in this process, doing many things, including securing presenters, consultants, and scheduling PD sessions throughout the year. In addition, the certificated collective bargaining agreement ensures that professional development in Mill Valley is mutually determined between certificated staff and administration. This process ensures that the educators who are in our classrooms each day, directly delivering curriculum instruction in our classrooms, have a say in the priorities and direction of professional development around teaching and learning in our district. The way this works is that each spring, MBTA representatives collaborate with Laura Myers and to solicit feedback from certificated staff on PD offerings and interests and then analyze the results. A common piece of feedback that we receive as MBTA leaders is that our members would appreciate more opportunities to weigh in on the PD. And in addition to indicating preferences on topics for PD, such as math, structured literacy, or DEIB, we appreciate the opportunity to provide feedback on specific consultants and curricula and the types of professional learning that would feel most supportive. We were really happy to see a very thorough exit ticket sent out by administration following yesterday's session, asking us to provide feedback on Wednesday's sessions, as well as feedback for the upcoming session in January. Here's just a little bit more about PD. So you might think that PD is like us sitting in a room and then taking in the information from someone at the board with the screen. But in addition to direct instruction from presenters and consultants, certificated staff members need time, either individually or with their site or grade level teams, to implement what they've learned. This implementation time is key to ensuring that Mill Valley students see the results of work on professional development days really quickly after the PD. It's during that time that we create lesson plans and collaborate with our site or grade level colleagues to integrate new ideas and materials we have learned into our day-to-day plans for students. We really appreciated seeing implementation time in our list of options for one of the afternoon sessions on Wednesday. That was a welcome change that we appreciated. So in summary, the PD Day provided a lot of rich learning opportunities for MBSD staff and was the result of a lot of collaboration, planning, and hard work on behalf of district staff. Thank you, Mill Valley families, for taking care of your children on a Wednesday so that we had the opportunity to spend the day growing as a community of learners and educators.
There you go. It's not on. Okay. There we go. Before we go, we wanted to take a quick minute to celebrate a collaboration between the MVTA and Mill Valley School District that was planned to benefit some of the classrooms that were devastated by the fires in Lahaina. Danny Marsh, a fifth grade teacher at Park School, brought the idea to our MVTA organizing committee, and they were excited to help. When Talia Kay, MVTA's organizing chair, brought the idea to Superintendent Kaufman, she quickly said yes to a joint effort. Danny explained the need for this fundraiser best. He said, as you know, the town of Lahaina, Maui, was decimated by fire. The loss of homes, businesses, places of worship, artifacts, pets, and loved ones was almost unfathomable. Lahaina was also home for 4 public schools, 3 of which were damaged, and the 4th, King Kamahea, the 3rd elementary, was burned down completely. So many teachers and students lost their homes in the fire, and now, as school is beginning, they've been dispersed throughout the island into temporary classrooms. Teachers have been given the basics, but beyond that, other items must be purchased on their own. A couple of friends and Danny reached out to teachers last month in Lahaina to see if we could help replenish their classrooms. They sent word throughout the teaching community and gathered Amazon wish lists for many classrooms. Some lists are from teachers who lost their classrooms, and some are from teachers who now have much larger classes than expected. If you'd like to help, click the Amazon link to purchase items and add them to your cart. In checkout, be sure to select their preferred Maui mailing address. If you feel inclined, please include a message to the teacher of support. You can find the links to support these Lahaina students and teachers in the family newsletter from October 18th. You can also find the information on MVTA's social media pages. Just search for Mill Valley Teachers Association on Facebook or Instagram. That's it for us tonight. We hope you all have a wonderful month.
Thank you very much. Now, do we have any public comment on items on the agenda that? Oh, fantastic. Pat is here. All right. Welcome, Pat. Pat, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. I'm just having a little bit of connection problems.
Welcome.
CSBA, we're having some elections this next month, and we're excited of getting new people involved. And we're also interested in, the planning of the new school at the middle school. I'm sure Erin and
Pat, are you still there? We're not able to hear you.
How we can assist and with the experiences that we had, I was there the entire time from when it was demolished until it was completely rebuilt. So I had that experience, and it was definitely not the easiest thing in that to go through, but we made it, and the middle school community is gonna have a similar experience.
Pat, you just went out again. Are you still there? We can't.
Yeah,
hear
I can
you.
hear you.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Thank you.
So that's about it for CSEA.
Well, thank you very much. We're glad you were there. And please let us know how we can help your connection if you're going to do this on Zoom. But we hope to see you in person real soon. Thanks, Pat. All right, now we're closing public comment on agenda items that are on the agenda. All right, and we're going to move to approval of the consent agenda. Is there any board interest in moving any of the consent agenda items at this time? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Second? Do I have a second?
Sorry.
Me?
Nakatani? Okay. Trustee Nakatani, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No, all. Yes. Trustee Abdulli with the normal caveats. All right. So we've approved the consent agenda and no items removed. And now we're going to move to item F, facilities. And we have our first item, Measure G update with Julio Arroyo, who's going to present this item. It's a report only, no action. Thank you, Julio. And it looks like you're bringing your team with you. Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Julio Arroyo, Director of Maintenance Operations and Safety for the school district. I'm here tonight with our AECOM team, Sandrine, who's our program manager, Sandrine Hitchcock, as well as Brett Mitchell, who is here, as well as our principal in charge with our AECOM team. We also have Abraham, who is with Into Action, their community engagement company that we're working with. So for tonight, we are going to provide an update on our Measure G projects and our timelines, as well as thank you for approving in the consent agenda the environmental consulting contract, and we'll be following up on that in future board meetings on the development of that work. As well as tonight, we also have a request for approval for our lease back contractors. And there's two contractors who are going to be up tonight. One is Flint, the other one is GCCI. Flint covering the middle school and GCCI covering our elementary modernization projects, as well as gain feedback from the school board on the middle school interim housing options. We're going to have Lionakis, our architect partners for the middle school, come and give some preliminary information about possible temporary housing here on site at the middle school campus and review next steps. And so during that process, we look forward to answering any questions from the school board and then reviewing the timeline as well as upcoming critical path decisions. So what you have here is our updated Measure G master schedule. We haven't had any changes since the last board meeting. The red dotted line indicates where we are in the schedule at this time. So we are still in the planning stage and would currently have campuses for the Mill Valley Middle School, as well as for Tam Valley and Strawberry. One thing we did during the professional development day on Wednesday, we took that opportunity to walk with our architect, JKAE, walking both campuses, looking really at all the scopes that are going to be included for those two elementary campuses, which are first up in our Measure G projects. And so that was a really good day and effective day to really check out every part of the campus and answer any questions that the architect and their team had. And next is our preliminary schedule for Measure G. This also has not changed. And so what we try to do here is just break it out into the different phases that we're looking at. And so when the planning for new construction is when we're scheduling the new construction, as well as the same for temporary housing, our design phases, and the work we're going to be doing with different agencies around CEQA or hazardous material, as well as the state architect's office, and then as well as just the construction of the middle school. And so that's what this shows here. And so we're just breaking it out, and it may be something that we do for the elementary school sites as we get deeper into as well. And this is just to kind of help out and to break out the different phases as well. I'm going to hand it off here to Sandrine, who's going to talk about the work we've been doing with consultants, our consultant team, and what's happening right now.
Thank you, Julio. Sandrine Hitchcock with AECOM. So talking about consultants, Julio mentioned we've been working with both Lionakis on the middle school and JKE on the modernizations. We had indeed a very good site walk this week for at Tam Valley and Strawberry. So the next steps for JKE is going to be confirming the priority one scope and updating the schedule. So we hope to bring you more information at the next meeting. And I'll let Laura talk later about where we are with the interim housing for the middle school. Julio also mentioned lease-leaseback. We are requesting approval tonight for the lease-leaseback contracts. So that means we would essentially engage our contractor in the design process starting next week as part of the pre-construction services. And to action will be Abraham will be giving you an update on the community meeting we had last week. We actually have another one Monday. So we welcome anybody who has any questions. Environmental engineering, thank you for approving on the consent agenda their contract. So that was the consultant we were talking about last time. Essentially, we heard a lot of concerns, a lot of questions about the existing site. So we went ahead and started early and engaged this consultant so that we can start the environmental assessment of the site. So hopefully, again, next month, we should be able to bring you some more information regarding this item. Surveying, we are almost complete with surveys of Tam Valley, Strawberry, and Mill Valley Middle School. And obviously the other schools will happen next year and the year after once we start working on them. CEQA, we have requested a proposal for CEQA and are hoping we can also start the whole process early to address the concerns at the middle school. So that will be upcoming next month. Hazmat, we are waiting to get the schematic design drawings for the modernizations to do the testing. Geotech services that will happen in February, depending on direction where we're going with the middle school. We'll engage the geotechnical engineer. State funding, we are continuing to work with our consultants, and we're at a good point where we have a list of projects for reimbursement, so that is going smoothly. And finally, project management information system. Essentially, we're working with a consultant to put a database together as it relates to schedule, funds, expenditure, and that's something essentially that will allow everybody in the future to look at where we're at with Measure G projects. So hopefully soon. I'm going to let Abraham give you a little update on the community meeting we had last week, essentially what we heard, and I'll come back with a little update on a few other things.
Wonderful. Thanks, Sandrine. Good evening, everybody. Just to give a brief overview of the feedback that we heard at the October 25th Community Forum, we heard questions, we being the Mill Valley School District, AECOM, Lionakis, and Into Action, received questions on the construction timeline, questions that were focused on the reality of the 2027-2028 completion date of the new middle school, any possible shortening of the proposed timeline, temporary housing, and the necessity of building a new middle school. We also heard questions on the cost of building a new middle school, with questions focused on the differences in cost relative to construction tasks when comparing renovations of the existing site versus building a new middle school. For environmental concerns, we heard questions that were focused on clarification on the new facilities being carbon zero, testing of the soil, testing of toxins at the wastewater treatment plant, and testing for possible pathogens. We heard on analysis of sites, questions that were focused on an analysis of additional sites, collaboration with the city of Mill Valley for additional sites to study, and what the backup plan would be in the event that the new middle school can't be built next to the existing site. For educational implications, we heard questions that were focused on the educational impacts of being next to a construction site, maintaining the K through 5 and 6 through 8 grade clusters, the inclusion of state-of-the-arts labs, the possible inclusion of new gyms and a new cafeteria, what temporary housing could look like, and if the blacktop space could accommodate for that temporary housing. Finally, for community engagement, we heard questions that were focused on the engagement process and ensuring that all comments from the community forums as they relate to the community are captured and brought to the Board of Trustees meeting, this meeting in itself, addressing community opinions on Nextdoor and the Marin Independent Journal, and the need to ensure the community remains informed throughout the Measure G process. Thank you.
So the last slide, essentially what you've seen before, no changes to the schedule through February, March. As we get closer to the January, February meetings, we'll have a better sense of what the next steps are. So we'll provide an update on that. One last item, as it relates to the community feedback, we heard a lot of questions about safety and maintaining educational goals and environment during construction. And I'm going to invite our partner from Flint to talk a little bit. But essentially, we just want to reinforce that safety is the highest priority for everyone. Whether it's AECOM, Linakis, or contractor partner, it is the highest priority. And we are also designing towards maintaining the best educational setting we can during construction and for the new facility. So really throughout the design, throughout agency approval, throughout construction, our goal is going to be to deliver and provide you with the best facility possible, but also safety is always a consideration, whether we have to, we are required by state law to comply with all the requirements. We are even enhancing that at many levels without, during design and during construction. So just want to let our partner Flint talk a little bit about safety during construction.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name's Nathan. I'm with Flint Builders. And look, I mean, safety, it's quite a buzzword in general contracting and construction, but literally, like, it's such a big deal, and without safety everything stops. Objectively speaking, we can't even do these works without having a clean record. That's a record for the community, for the people around us. You're actually not allowed to bid on public works jobs without having a very clean record per Cal OSHA. So first of all, we have an EMR rating that allows us to bid. We then get accepted. And then throughout the whole safety state, there's a bunch of different stages, and it starts with obviously the pre-planning. And the pre-planning is the logistics and the phasing. With that, we need to plan out our barricades, our fencing. We need to plan out thoroughfares for the staff, the students, thoroughfares for deliveries, access, material storage. With the site, we need to plan out fire hydrants, bathrooms. It all gets pre-planned, and the absolute priority is the surrounding community, the people that we are building for, the staff, the students. It's all based around that. And then once we have completed all this planning. We then send it through to the district. We send it through to ACOM. It then gets vetted out. It then gets reviewed. It then gets refined. It must then be approved. So there's a whole pre-planning phase. Then we have the actual construction phase. With that, we have continuous monitoring. We have continuous dust suppression. Understandably, with the removal of contaminated soils, there's a very extensive testing phase that happens once we have done the mitigation to ensure there's no traces of contaminants. And as I mentioned at the last board meeting, I personally wouldn't access that site if there were traces of something that was considered toxic or dangerous to regular human. So we then obviously go through that process. We are then continually monitoring for deliveries. We work around the school schedule. We work around the hours of the school. We do heavy duty stuff on the weekends or in the afternoons or outside of school times. It's all based around the school and the production of the school. And then with that, obviously on site as well, just as important as the community and the staff is the safety of our workers as well, to do with PPE, to do with daily safety meetings, to do with, Cal OSHA, weekly, monthly audits. It's all so thorough and critical to us successfully doing these projects. So it's a lot of work, and that's why we all have a job as well. In general contracting, is because managing the whole safety and safety protocol is such a big aspect. So I hope I can help put some of your minds at ease, and we'll always be available to talk, or if you do want to discuss any of these aspects. It's a lot of work for us, and it's critical, and it's very, very important to us as well.
Thank you. And that is our Measure G update.
Well, thank you. All right. And now we move to any public comment on this item. No public comment on this item. Okay, then this is not a reportable action, but with raised hands, we'll have some questions from our board members. Trustee Yu.
Regarding the construction, can I find out what you do about noise mitigation during the construction? This is a Flint question. That's one thing, that the parents asked.
Absolutely. So I guess how we manage noisy works throughout the construction phase. Again, it's all the way we schedule it and what we work around. There's obviously the adequate fencing, hoarding to kind of separate. And then works that do have high vibration, high noise, we can do them later in the afternoon. We can do them on the weekend. We do them within working hours that are accepted by the school and by the community. But typically there won't be anything too aggressively noisy that you haven't heard or dealt with before. But yeah, absolutely. Anything that is above and beyond, we'll pre-plan it. We'll get approval from all parties involved, that being the district, school, ACOM, and then we proceed with those works.
Thank you. Any other board questions? Trustee Nakatani, who's your question for?
Into action. So we have another meeting already, November 6th. And I just want to, two questions. One, I gave you that list of 50-something people in our community that are not part of our school district. And I'm wondering, have they been emailed with all the future dates so they know all the future meetings that we're having? And if not, when is that going to happen? And because, sorry, you mentioned advertising in the IJ and
that was feedback that was heard
it was
on
okay. So
opinions
we
being
haven't
on
actually
IJ.
done that. So I was just wondering, one, when we're telling, outside of the people on Parent Square that get the notices about these upcoming community meetings, when we're telling them, and then what the content of the meeting will be from our design team, because as far as I know, outside of the interim school presentation we're about to get in about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, there hasn't been a lot of new work that the board has been presented with. So I just want to make sure the meeting's valuable.
Yeah, I can answer the first part of the question. Typically we send those emails out to the invite list the Friday and the Wednesday before. So those emails will be sent out first thing tomorrow morning individually to that contact list. That's in addition to the flyering that we put around town.
And it'll have the December date on it too, because what I'm hearing
we can
people are
definitely
like,
do that.
I didn't even know it was coming up and I got noticed too late is what they were telling me.
I see.
So,
We can definitely send the invite out now that we've defined the December date as of
okay.
last week.
And then maybe make it into MV Connect too, because the last MV Connect that went out didn't have the latest Measure G meeting because we didn't make it into their, I think, bi-monthly email is what they do. So I just want to make sure they have it so then they can reach out to everyone too.
Absolutely. We can coordinate with the district to make that happen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other trustee? Yes, trustee Dolly. Oh, I'm sorry. Julio wanted to also.
I just
Answer.
wanted to ask, answer the second part, and Sandrine will add anything that, anything else you would like to add as well. Is for this upcoming meeting is, yes, as was discussed, we're gonna have a discussion around the interim housing, and so be able to gauge feedback from the community around interim housing that's being presented tonight. So that's the first objective. In addition to, we are bringing back, because it has been heavily focused on the middle school, we want to make sure that we're bringing back information about each modernization at each elementary school, and what's going to be included in each. And that's information that's been previously presented to the school board. And so because we have been having a focus, we want to make sure that we balance those two things out. And so we're going to be bringing forward the scopes that are going to be included at each school site to make a representation of the whole Measure G at this upcoming meeting. And that's our goal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Abdoli.
I just wanted to share that, you know, I got some great feedback about your last meeting. And, you know, including from Supervisor Moulton Peters, that it was just great tone, great presentation, great delivery. So I just wanted to express gratitude. I know, you know, we're a very involved community, so we appreciate you really making sure you have all your information ready. You're presenting a ton of great information, so really appreciate and want to just share that great feedback that I had received.
Thank you. Anybody else? Trustee Hugh.
Another comment, I would have to say a lot of the concerns, you know, all the parents were initially very concerned about the safety. I think, you know, we made them feel a little bit more, or actually a lot more comfortable would be my guess.
Thank you.
I also just wanted to ask, into action, have you, a protocol by which you are able to self-reflect on your processes? It was not at the first meeting, but I did hear anecdotally that the second meeting protocol was much more effective. And I'm just wondering if you can share with us your self-reflection on that, and if you had any surprises for the next or is it going to be the same kind of process?
To answer the first question, we definitely had a moment of self-reflection after the first meeting. We didn't anticipate our outreach and promotion would be that effective to the extent that we would have over 70 participants online in combination with this, if I remember correctly, near 70 participants in person. So managing the flow of those questions coming in from both ends was crucial for the second meeting. We used a tool called Slido that effectively funnels questions from both directions in order by most recent, to then make sure equitably that people were getting the same amount of priority for their questions. And not only that, we heard that time was of the essence at the last meeting, and that everybody had the opportunity to present their question because there was a few individuals that had many questions to answer. So our team had the opportunity to present the questions to the AECOM and LINACS and the district teams, instead of having every person go one by one and come, especially offline, or not offline, but off mic for Zoom, which, you know, can be a process, somebody finding the mic button and coming off mute. And moving forward for the third meeting, we're going to replicate that process that we had at the second meeting, and we hope it continues to serve the community.
Thank you. Julio.
Well, I just want to add, one of the other things is for folks who didn't have maybe a device, we also had an in-person paper for in-person that they could also write out their questions, just to make sure we had all bases covered.
Thank you. Excellent. Yes, Trustee Katz.
Just going to try to say something different from what's already been said, but I sent a message to Elizabeth following the meeting. I hope you all received it, but was just super impressed. And everything that I heard from the community was just gratefulness for how civil it was, how equitable it was in terms of being able to ask questions, the transparency with which everything was addressed, even the things where you flat out said, I don't know yet. And I think people really appreciate that. And all of the buzz and concerns that may have been starting to come up, and I'm sure we will continue to go through many cycles of this, were allayed very quickly because of how you collectively handled this, and I'm sure we'll continue to handle it. So just thank you for all the work that's going into it, because I am sure it's not insignificant.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments from the board? All right, seeing none, thank you. We can now go on to item 2, consider approval of LLB contracts with GCCI Julio Arroyo. Thank you. There will be approval of this, a motion to approve or not after.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. So for the next 2 items, we have a request for approval for our lease back contractors and agreements and respective agreements. So the first one up is number 2 is we have Flint, who's here with us tonight. And so this is the culmination of our request for proposal process, which started in August. We held interviews. Thank you, Trustee Nakatani, for joining our interview panel and making the selection that came to the school board at the last meeting for request for approval from the contractors, which gave us then the opportunity to negotiate and bring back the terms for the agreement for this meeting. And so tonight this is the first item where we'll be requesting proposal for our lease back. And so there within the contract, as we have our agreement, we have the site lease and as well as the facility lease that is included in the agreement. And so as part of this process is you'll see this agreement come back in different additional amendments in the future. And so that's as we have our initial agreement and then we build towards what's called, after the design phase is complete, our guaranteed maximum price once we actually have the design phase. And then there'll be a financing component that will be included for the school district to review. So you'll see this agreement come back and also in updated forms as we go forward for the future. So we are requesting tonight for approval for Flint Builders for our lease back agreement, site lease and facility lease for our middle school project.
Thank you, Julio. And now, do we have any public comment at this time? Okay, seeing no public comment, we now have questions, opening up the floor for board questions. Let's start with Trustee Katz with her first question.
I guess more of a comment than a question. I had noticed, based on community feedback, there was provision 32.5 hours of work, just referring to how the focus would be on minimizing disruption as best as possible, minimizing noise and impact. And so I know with that, as well as item 62, use of roadways and walkways that will not interfere with any walkways. There were some concerns raised at the meeting previously. And so our friend from Flint has already addressed that with the hours of work and the ways that can work around to minimize disruption. And I just appreciate that this has been accounted for and is obviously something that's top of mind in the planning.
Any other questions? We also will go to deliberation. Any questions? Please, Trustee Yu.
So I did hear that we get the right of approval for any assignees if should something happen. But I just want to understand, I mean, maybe it's my former distress mentality, but investor mentality, but what happens if, let's say, I mean, it's very little, possibility, maybe 0.01% possibility that the general contractor has to file for bankruptcy. What typically happens? Has it ever happened? I'm sorry, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, part of the pre-proposal process is to make sure that we have fiscally solvent, responsible contractors. And so a lot of that process they're done at Brad Streets are run. We really learn the fiscal solvency of a contractor. We look at their track record, and I've never had this happen, but they all are required to have certain bondability. And if for some reason they're unable to perform, then you initiate the bond company who follows through with the contract, either through the bidding process or selection of another contractor. I've never had that happen.
So I'm asking a very technical question too, because we're doing lease back. So we are leasing them the land and then we lease it back later, right? But in between that period, I'm just thinking about, who owns that land when we're leasing it from them, all our facilities?
You still own it. It's just a. it's
We
a-
just
it's a-
own it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just a lease to improve.
Lease to improve. So that's all. So we still own and everything else, and they're just holding the contract, and it's the contract that is going to be the asset that's in the
Correct.
bankruptcy. court.
Anytime there's a change of ownership of school property, it's a completely different.
Yeah.
As you know, process. This is just a lease.
Okay. I just feel like I should at least ask. Yeah.
Also, I just wanted to point out, subs doing what, 10% of the overall construction work, or it was a $2 million threshold or something. They had to be pre-qualified as well. Is that right? Yeah. So
Okay. Yeah.
it's not just Flint, it's
Yeah.
all the subs under. them,
Yeah.
too.
I saw that, and they all have to have insurance. Yeah. Okay. And I note that it's not 10% per month interest, but 10 divided by 12. So I was much more relieved.
Excellent. Well, let's move to deliberation. Meaning, is there any comments that any board member wishes to make before we deliberate?
No, it's a lot of reading.
A lot of reading. That's good. And I know, Trustee Nakatani, you did the reading. So with that, may I have a motion to approve the leaseback agreement, site lease and facilities lease to Mill Valley Middle School project to Flint contractor?
Yeah.
A second?
Second.
Okay, who was the first? So,
You could get the first and I'll get the
all right,
second.
Sid, do you have that? All right, that needs to go in the record. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you very much. We're excited for you to be part of our team. Great. Okay, so now we are going to go to, I'm sorry, the item, I'm flip-flopping. I'm going to repeat myself from before. Consider approval of LLB contract with GCCI. Julio, please.
Yes, thank you very much for the last approval. And similar to that approval, we're here for GCCI, who will be in charge of our, what we're calling our modernizations. And so that's work that's going to be taking place for our elementary school sites, all 5 of them. And so it's a same process that was followed, request for proposals. And here we received 8 responses. We interviewed with the interview panel, 5 of them, and went through the process, and we're here at the last board meeting. We approved this vendor with the idea that we would come back at this meeting to be able to come back with the terms that you're seeing here forth. And so just like the last agreement, it's going to be a process of us coming back with guaranteed maximum price once we finish the design work. And so you'll see this agreement be updated through different amendments and requesting for your approval. But for tonight, we're requesting here for the initial approval to start the pre-construction services here with GCCI.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment at this time? All right, do we have any board questions of staff before deliberation? Seeing none, any board deliberation? All right, well, may I have a motion to approve a leaseback agreement, site lease and facilities lease? Oh, all good ideas can be brought out and birthed in this room at this moment.
moved.
Trustee, do you have,
Motion to
I thought you had
approve,
a
yeah.
question and you
No,
wanted to
no,
back
no,
up.
motion to
Oh
approve.
my God, you're fighting over there for who's, okay.
I was yelling at her.
Hold on. For the modernization project to GCCI Inc. contractor. Do I have a
So
motion?
moved.
All right, second.
Second. We're all very excited about. this
Sid will
project.
pick whoever she chooses for posterity's sake. This will be reviewed probably 100
Yeah.
years from now. And all in favor? Aye. Opposed? It passes. All right. Thank you very, very much. And now we have our last item under F4, review of interim housing for middle school students during middle school construction. Julio Arroyo will present this item. It's a report only, no action. Julio?
And Julio's going to hand it to me for 1 second.
Yeah.
I just wanted to update the board. We have, we're presenting one scenario tonight, which doesn't mean that that's the only scenario we'll ever present. We're just waiting to have our opportunity to meet with the city regarding potential other locations. And they actually reached out to us today to go over overall construction timelines and practices with both the city, TAM district and us, and then we will be sending them a letter asking them for access to their property and a meeting to discuss it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And tonight we have Laura Noss with Lionakis, who's our architect partner for the middle school, and she'll be going over this overview of the temp housing option we have here.
Thanks, Julio. So in your packet for the board meeting, you received a test fit. We're here really to respond to a couple of things. The first is that the question that we saw when Abraham presented, will it even fit, right, on the existing site? And so this test fit begins to evaluate that. The second is, what is the environment like for the students while they're in the interim housing? Can we maintain that grade level pod configuration or co-location? So you can see here that the existing multi-purpose building and existing portables remain, and then we have a new administration and sixth grade wing, temporary library, a seventh and eighth grade wing, and then the maintenance of the PE classrooms. We took a guess on this initial one to get it into your board packet that we would have 7 classrooms per grade level plus 2 science buildings. We subsequently met with the site principal, and we were almost right. We only had to add one more room. So we have that update here as well. But we first wanted to share with you a fly-through video of what this temporary campus could look like, maybe to help with any concerns that we can't make a decent environment for students. And it's got spicy music too. So you can see where the existing multi-purpose and existing portables, they're grayed out. To folks' points about a front entry gate, we've shown that. This would be the sixth grade wing. The raised platform you see is because the portable buildings themselves are raised, and that allows us to create a little bit better outdoor learning environment than just the ramps that we're used to seeing on portable buildings. This is a space outside the library with some shade structures, and then we start to see the 7th and 8th grade pod with some potential for shade structures, planting, and again, that raised deck to create some outdoor learning environments. One of the goals we're looking at here is to create some shade in outdoor planter areas. Those shade trees can then grow and be planted again at the new school site. So as Dr. Kaufman said, there are other options on the table, but we did want to bring some comfort to the board that we could achieve a decent learning environment for the students for those 2 years. There's one last slide, which is the post principal meeting that it just moves a few things around. It's not markedly different, but we did want to make it clear we had met with him and have secured what we think the building program needs to be.
Excellent. Okay. So now let's open this up for public comment. Do we have any public comment at this time? Okay, seeing no public comment, and this is not a board action, do we have any board questions at this time? Trustee Yu?
So I was just wondering, where would the outdoor PE space be? Will there be any? Yeah.
So one of the things that we're talking about, as Dr. Kaufman mentioned, is could we have access to the even if we maintained on this site, could we have some access to the adjacent baseball field, for example, to create an outdoor learning environment? I suppose there's always the skate park, and we're maintaining the multi-purpose and all the rooms around that and the PE rooms that exist in an effort to try and maintain as much physical education space for students. And those small outdoor learning spaces, we're hoping, extends the learning environment enough that it feels more open than maybe what you're used to seeing in a typical portable village. And so that idea was just to add add a little something nice for kids that'll be in this for most of their middle school career.
Any other trustee? Any other questions? Trustee, do you have a question? Another question, please?
So these portable buildings, how would you deal with the smell? Like a lot of people are complaining about the smell right now. We don't smell them, but they're a little bit more outdoorsy, the new buildings. So how do you, inside the classroom, is it the ventilation, it's just.
So a lot of this is dependent on where we access the portables, because typically they're a leased property because you don't want to purchase all of these portables. And so how we source those is going to be important. There are options for different kinds of HVAC units that use more or less or shut off the outside air. We can certainly explore that, but it is true that circulation between classes will be exterior in this environment. So that I'm not sure we can avoid even with the best of intention.
I had a question. Not knowing exactly how the wind blows, but knowing that I've done construction and you do have, dust and what have you. Can you just share with us what mitigation, should this be a consideration, is there in construction of this size with an adjacent active school site with students?
Yeah, of course. So often we will, one, we like the location of the existing multipurpose building because it does a pretty good job of blocking some of the potential dust. But typically there'll be fencing, there'll be blankets on the fencing. We can make that fencing taller. We can even look at trees or other things along that line. We would work with Flint to come up with a plan for the interim housing that includes how their expectations for their construction zone are, so that they can work while we have students working, but also so that we can make it as nice a space as possible. We are looking to maintain the road to the west of the multipurpose building for fire access. And so that gives an additional 25 feet of buffer before we would even expect to see a construction fence line. And so I'm hoping that we can look at some of those opportunities and their schedule to mitigate that any dust or construction debris.
Thank you. Any other questions?
My last.
Trustee Yu.
What about parking for the teachers, and where would that go?
I think some of our exploration with on non-district owned properties are going to try very hard to focus on parking. We think the drop off is good, but even today as I arrived, there was so much activity on the community center fields and elsewhere that it was pretty full. So looking at adjacent properties and partnerships with them is very much in the works.
Okay, any other questions? Trustee Nakatani.
So this, which is slightly different than what ended up on the agenda online. It looks like there's 3 more portables underneath the library on the north of the 8th grade wing. And I would assume that any kind of open classroom space, or maybe like, I know kiddo offices are in a current portable, but if it's a fully operational DSA approved portable, we would stick children in it, right? And we would take
We
our.
have 3
Okay.
of the existing that will be available to meet the needs of this building. And then the ones you see there are what's needed additional. And the
additional, okay.
slight change was we wanted to make sure we had adequate restroom location. So as we do the counts for that, putting those adjacent to the PE where there's already
right.
restrooms made a lot of sense. And that pushed a couple of the 7th grade rooms down adjacent to the library. But again, the labeling is our labeling at this point.
Sure, yeah.
And we're hoping that there's a little flexibility there.
Trustee Katz.
Is the wellness center accounted for in here, or do we lose that for a couple of years?
I don't think we'll lose anything. There's quite a bit of room here, and there's also spaces within the multipurpose building that we can reimagine how that works. So that's our next step now that we got the numbers right and we've proven to ourselves it will fit. And then we'll go through a more detailed programming piece, because as we lease those portable buildings, some of them are going to have specific needs, water, science related things, or other, certainly administration is going to be unique in their needs.
Any other board trustee questions? All right, thank you very much for a comprehensive presentation. Appreciate it. And now we're going to move on to item G, student learning and school programs. And we are going to review BP and AR 511.1 student enrollment and school assignment. Dr. Kaufman will present this item with Kate Sprague, who present the thought exchange results. And you are going to be requesting some board direction.
Yes.
After this. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. We have had this item as a trustee request from last spring, and wanted to provide access to the policy as updated in October of 2022, which essentially offers parent choice for which site they would like their children to attend, with the additional caveat that siblings will be kept together and considered residents of the school. So whereas in the past, we've had situations where siblings have been inadvertently, divided based on how we've tried to balance classrooms district-wide, this policy, as revised last year, pretty much states parents have a choice on their, first of all, program needs are considered. So special education placement or something like that. Then siblings of currently enrolled students are considered. And then parent choice is considered with rank order aligned to proximity and a number of other factors that Kate will go over. We opted to survey families to ask them what was the most important consideration when they are looking at, how to enroll their children and where. So as we look at our policy, what's most important to families, Kate's going to share that information. And then, one of the observations we have, of course, is that we're surveying people whose children are already placed. So a second pass may be to engage the families of TK students or, entering kindergarten students from preschool. So those are potentially another pass for us. But in this case, if there is board direction for any changes or any additional considerations, we're happy to hear it. My recommendation would be that we would consider those not for the 24-25 school year, but build a process for evaluating and engaging community members and staff and evaluating potential scenarios for enrollment too, for the impact for 25-26, because we do need to start our enrollment process for the 24-25 school year imminently. So I will hand it over to Kate.
Thank you. So we have just a few slides here again, starting with what the question that we asked was of people. We provided a little bit of context around this, that we provided the board policy to people linked as well if they would like to read more about that and the criteria for placement of students. And then we asked, what is the most important priority to consider when assigning students to schools? And we did provide some examples: proximity to home address, sibling school of attendance, parent preference, when families register, balance of class sizes across the district, etc. And just as a reminder, a thought exchange is a platform. Maybe you took it, those of you who have kids in the district, and you get that question presented to you. You're asked to give your thought, and then you're asked to rate other people's thoughts from within the platform. So next slide, please. So For this, this was a quick thought exchange. So it was just a week long, actually, just over a week. And we did only have 37 participants for this. So this is a very small sample size. Of that 37 participants, they each gave at least one thought, and we did generate 431 ratings, which is great. That means everybody rated over 10 on average. We did ask for some demographic information. So of the 37 participants, 29 of those people said that they do currently have students attending Mill Valley schools, and we did get some people who do not currently have students attending Mill Valley schools as well. And then we did have a further breakdown. We had 6 who indicated they have TK and preschoolers, 21 K through 5th graders, 10 6th through 8th graders, and 6 did not have students. So, and again, that's an overlap, some who represent multiple groups there. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the key thoughts, these were the most highly rated thoughts. Location and traffic flow, proximity, but interestingly, proximity so that kids can develop some independence coming and going rather than some of the other proximity related thoughts, and siblings assigned together, being able to keep siblings together. Next slide, please. Here's that word cloud that shows you some of the other things that came up. So in particular, neighborhood, traffic, proximity, attendance, walking, those are all things that came up in multiple thoughts in different ways. And again, as Dr. Kaufman stated, these responses, this does represent a limited number of responses, so that's important to consider. However, it also shows that the perspectives are balanced. They represent a variety of different considerations, just as our board policy tries to do, while understanding that siblings is definitely a priority that we need to be able to accommodate for within our district. We do know, as Dr. Kaufman stated, that this may not be the most material in terms of data as our ending point, but instead, because these families are already enrolled, we need to consider families who have not enrolled yet and are going to be enrolled. And perhaps we also need to go further with the families who are enrolled. Did you always feel this way? Or when you were going to enroll, did you think one thing was most important, and as you ended up at a school that maybe wasn't your first choice, it became the right fit because of some other reason, and learning how to gather that information as well.
Thank you. All right. So now we're going to ask for any public comment. So we have no public comment on this. So since you're asking Superintendent Kaufman for board direction, I think we'll start first with any questions, and then I think we need to have a time when we can provide some kind of deliberation. I'm thinking that we don't need to come to some consensus. You just want some kind of feedback, correct? Can you clarify that?
I'll clarify. I think one thing, given that we know there's urgency in terms of just implementing as is right now, I think the question would be, is there interest in us getting more data and trying to define some scenarios, like bringing you the windows of attendance areas, where we see the students enrolled versus, where their choices are. For the most part, the challenge for us is that if we were to look at neighborhood schools, and try to look at, if let's say we had regular attendance boundaries for each school, right? Because our schools are so close to each other, the Venn diagram of choice, is going to be overlapping. So we're not sure how fruitful that would be. I think what we think is probably most important next is to interact with our TK and hopefully preschool families, and just say, here's how we do things here. What are the pluses? What are the minuses as we move forward? And then maybe to track them through that process, and provide feedback, going into either at the end of, I would think probably we need to get it once they're actually in school next year, but sort of to engage them, collect their data, and then get their feedback on the process. For me personally, I struggle with not being able to absolutely tell every parent who lives right next door to a school that they can go to the school, right? And yet it is much more complicated than that, in the sense that our schools are small, they're close to each other. We are trying to balance enrollment, in some of our schools, because we want to at least maintain 2 classes. So one of the other pieces that I would like direction on, and again, this can be a process that we can study, is the board under ed code, parents have the right to choose their schools, generally. And if you have if you have specified attendance areas, you also can't displace children who are residents. So we don't have a specified attendance area, so we have the ability to just ask for choice. One of the considerations that I, as superintendent on your behalf, need to factor in to that, the decision making, is what is the capacity for each of our school sites, and that part to me is unclear. So I could say total possibility for pupil enrollment less neighborhood kids equals extra space for any other kid that wants to come, right? And that's typically how it would be factored. And then we would do what's called an intra-district transfer, meaning that you would ask, if I wanted to go to school X and I lived in, by school A, I would have to fill an intra-district transfer. And then what we would be saying in that case was, if there are neighborhood students who enroll and need access to the school, you will have to go back to your residence school. So that's the challenge for us, is that because we don't have that, and we go ahead and we try to balance our classrooms district-wide, and because we have a wait list process, what happens is, we can say, okay, there's 23 students, in each classroom district-wide, and we want to hold that extra 24th space for any kid who moves in the district. Well, with a wait list, people are going to be asking us, no, you can't hold for a neighborhood kid because you've got this wait list process. So, it's much more complicated than one would anticipate. And then when we look at the data and we see people's perspectives are relatively balanced, and it's not a super urgent. So two test cases, right? One, only 37 people responded. So it's probably not a huge issue. Although again, I don't know that the TK families know about this yet, or preschool families. And then the other piece, because things are relatively balanced in perspectives, we don't have a trend that's telling us, oh, go do this research or that research. So my recommendation would be that we connect with TK families and try to do some outreach to preschool, follow that work. And then I do think at some point we want to look at capacity for our schools and articulate that in some fashion. I'm not sure what the best way to do that, although I will tell you my practice moving into next year would be at least 2 classrooms at each school per grade level, because I think that's just that is what it takes to run a school, at least in a TK through 5 configuration or a K through 5 configuration. So.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we've got some hands up. Trustee Abdulli.
So I think the reasons you articulate for why we should not have neighborhood schools, with particularly certain ones being really close, and just the challenge of it really doesn't necessarily work in our community and with our sizes, makes sense. So I don't think I would be supporting going to neighborhood schools. But that being said, what I'm seeing here with recognizing the really small demographic is a much lesser emphasis on the class size than it sounds like we've been placing. And so it does concern me that, and I think that's what we saw with like the TAM situation initially, when they're like, no, I want to go to my neighborhood school. I don't care about the size. So to me, it feels like the conversation needs to be around, maybe we're not prioritizing the right thing. Like that's what I want to understand. Like it almost feels like we need to allow a little less balance. While I appreciate the reasons, but like it feels like people are saying, and this is where I would totally support getting more data, I'd rather be at a closer school that has, again, within our understood class sizes, a little higher of a class size still within our limits, than necessarily going to a further school because you feel like that's getting exactly the same number across. And so I think we definitely need to do some more data collection around proximity versus size, because it, correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like we emphasize size a lot more than proximity.
I think that's important information to collect from our community for sure. And, that's also why we would involve staff. Although again, we have collective bargaining agreements that dictate class size. So often what you see is you're balancing class sizes within a school site. You know, so if there's 18 in one and 24 in the other, you try to make it, you know, balanced. And I think that's, you know, it's a conversation for us to have as a community. You know, there's other considerations of, you know, if 50 people want school A and, you know, we can move a teacher from school Y, you know, is that what we do? So, but it begins to create a bunch of inequity, conversations. And of course, in declining enrollment, you run the risk of creating schools that are almost not big enough to run effectively. So I think there's all sorts of considerations for us to bring forward.
Trustee Katz.
I think what might be helpful in doing the polling is also to, and I don't know how easy it is to do this, but to present the trade-offs. Because I think that it's very simple for people to say, like, in a vacuum, I would love this, but wouldn't necessarily be willing to trade it.
Right.
You know, we know some people who felt very strongly about smaller class size and would leave their neighborhood school. So I think being able to help better educate people around that if you choose this, would you be willing to trade off for that? Then I think that would maybe give a more accurate sense of where the priorities are. Yeah.
Is that an option for us to, I mean, like, when we're doing signups, like, is there a reason we can't be like,
Yeah.
Is your priority neighborhood school or class size? Like,
Can we update it on our website? Like, you know, how many are enrolled in per class? Like, I don't know.
so-
That way school is 20 and the other one is 24 and you pick whether you want, I don't know.
have that information.
No,
like,
yeah.
to her point though, like, it doesn't have to be that it's this school. It could be just that, like, are you comfortable? Like, do you prefer us to just put you in the school with the most capacity, or is proximity, because different families have different morning routines and availability to get to other sides of the city.
I think that's, you know, again, so many of these conversations are fraught with like unintended consequences. Because again, if there's a wait list, you know, and I'm calling, you know, neighborhood parent X and saying, well, you know, I can get you to this school, but it's going to be 24 kids in a class. And again, you know, I'm saying this absolutely not addressing the instructional impact, you know, so I know our educators will have other perspectives on this, but, you know, let's just say we are saying, okay, we're going to staff within our contractual ratios, which we have to do anyway to be fiscally solvent, you know, in that case, you know, if I can't create that space for every parent at every school, you know, and I pick up the phone and say, well, you know, I can get you this, but the school that you want to go to doesn't have that option because it's already full. So it's just those ripple effects that, you know, I think we have to just be very clear. And I do think our primary audience, you know, my personal bias is the educators place students in schools. And, you know, I can argue that there's, good research that class size doesn't actually have an impact on student learning, although I also have my own, you know, perspectives and beliefs around that. So I think one of the risks that we have is, you know, we have amazing schools all over our district. And I think when people get preferential around what feels like their community because they attended there before, it's difficult you can't reason with that. This is where my kid is there. They made their friends. They were in TK there. And that's an unintended consequence of the state providing us this TK mandate without a whole lot of support. So again, it's super complicated. And my gut's like, let's look at what our capacity is and define that moving forward, because I think that's a fair thing to do. It may take us some time, but then also looking at really, okay, if you're a consumer in our community and you've just bought a house here or you're raising your children here, what matters to you? Because those are the people whose children aren't in our system yet and who we should hear. I don't know that we can make everybody happy.
And I
Trustee, go
just
ahead.
in response to that, I think that also a challenging thing is that, so TK, a lot of people want to continue to go to kindergarten at the school that they are already familiar with, even if they live next door to me, up the
Or
hill on
Grand
Mount
Valley.
Tam, and, you know, would drive into Old Mill Park long before they'd get to Etna. I also think that families who don't have kids here, and we've talked about this previously, but almost by presenting choice, it makes it seem like there is a right choice and there is a
Yeah.
best school. And
Yeah.
I think you see on Nextdoor all the conversation that parents are like, which is the
Best
what
school.
should I put as my preference? Because which is the best one that I want my kid to go to? And they're all wonderful.
Right.
And they all have different flavors to them, but it's what's going to work best for your family. So I think it almost gives them a false sense of like, there is something that is going to be amazing. And does it provide the special, you know, special services for my kid if they have one, or if they have those needs? And is it close? But I don't think they necessarily know what it is that would be different about each school other than what's close.
And I think, you know, kind of to jump in on that, one of our jobs as a board and governance team is to make sure that we have a guaranteed and viable curriculum and equitable supports that are available to children at each school. I do think, you know, as we continue our DEI work, we also need to look at the additional funding that goes to students at each site and how, what is our position on allowing differential contributions by PTAs and foundation. Foundation doesn't provide it, but you know, like what is the guaranteed and viable experience for our children? Because a heartbreaking thing to me is that perception that one's better or not. And I can say absolutely with 100% certainty, and I've said this I think before, I would put my kids, any one of them, in any class in this district, and I think any of us would. And so it's heartbreaking to me to hear the call from the father who is trying to register his kid while his wife's in labor and doesn't get the school that he wants and has been calling all summer, and there just wasn't any space. And I mean, like, people are trying to do the very best thing for their kids and they want them to get the right start. And it's heartbreaking to me that there's some perception, and we, by virtue of our policy, to your point, we sort of create that even though it's not really that. So I don't know how to undo it, but
Can I make a comment in that, in listening to all this, and I'm thinking back to our board role, is tying this policy to our values and mission. And we are embarking on a new strategic plan and all of this. And when I was listening to Trustee Abdulli, I was looking at this. Yes, it's a small sample size, but I see the things that I have heard anecdotally in the community from new parents, which is proximity, traffic. Traffic is huge. And it would be fascinating. Actually, my recommendation would be for us to actually, as part of our data gathering, do a traffic study of our current policy and its impact on Mill Valley. Also, I absolutely concur that we want to wait. Well, I feel we want to weight our questions to the TK, the pre-K, the new parents. I also think that you're speaking very soundly in terms of having our MVTA and CSEA partners right there along this conversation, because there are the educational implications of this policy currently and any new shift that we would need guidance on. But I, and you know, and Trustee Katz can disagree with me, but I remember your story about how, you know, because you live up near my mother in the way in the outback, and how that must have been so difficult for you to think about that journey to Edna. But now probably you wouldn't change it. Like, I think the human resilience and ability to adapt and change and find connection, that they may not be the best people we want to give this thought exchange to, is the people currently in the system, because because they're living with it and they're finding value in it the best they can. So those are my thoughts. Trustee Nakatani?
So, about, I don't know, 8, 9 years, 10, I don't know, many years ago. After Edna McGuire was built, and for, I think, 3 or 4 years, we had a school bus program because we were at peak enrollment and traffic was really a problem. So at the time, Edna McGuire did send home, just as 8.5 by 11 in all the Wednesday folders. I think it came home a map of all of Mill Valley. And your instructions were to use a yellow highlighter and highlight your house and how you got to Edna. This was done paper and pencil. It was not a, MapQuest, I'm dating myself, Google, like you didn't do it online. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, someone's actually going to tally this information, but they did. And we had the bus worked for a while, all sorts of reasons. And I don't know all of them exactly what happened, but, so it's possible. My point is collecting data is possible, and that's an interesting one. I'm hesitant to change anything about what we do now because what we're putting on the table is a tremendous amount of choice. And I don't think as parents, when we're enrolling our children into public school, it's like, I'm just surprised we even got a choice anyway, but then that's just how our system works.
Yeah.
Enrollment, so any kind of changes need to withstand time, and enrollment's going to change, and I'm hesitant to change anything because when that enrollment changes and it goes back up, then we might be chasing our tails and trying to fix something that we unintended consequences. So that's my concern.
Trustee Abdoli?
So I appreciate all of our schools are great, but for me, that's not the issue. We have some working parents, we have single parents, like we're really missing the point that I think the reason a lot of these are bold, I mean, traffic's number one, proximity. Not every parent has the luxury to take 30, 45 minutes to get to the school. And so it's not always about like, oh, I don't like that school. I agree that there's definitely some, vibes of like, well, what's the best or, but I that's a huge factor. I mean, I'm in Strawberry. I'm not going to be able to get to Park or Old Mill. That's not a thing. I would not be able to like work-wise. So I don't want to like undervalue or like diminish like, oh, these parents are just all saying it's what they think is the best or, there are traffic issues. There are proximity issues. Trying to go from one side to the other now, do I think is as pronounced when you're talking about Old Mill, Park, and Edna? Probably not. And do I think that it has to be considered equally for all families? Probably not. But I do think if you're saying like cross a highway, cross a certain, to Michelle's point about the traffic, maybe there are tiers, maybe it's that it's not everybody gets the same choice, but we recognize that there are certain pockets that are going to face more of a traffic proximity attendance issue than other pockets. And in our traffic study, that is a variable, but I really don't want to diminish that parents are all just choosing based on perceived feelings of better or worse.
Yeah. Trustee Yu?
Yeah, I kind of agree with what Trustee or President Hodge said and you said, because, for me in Tam Valley, my son is in Tam Valley. I picked that school because I wanted my only child to have friends in the neighborhood. So that was my choice. And the sense I get was we give the parents too much choice, I feel like most people would want to stay within their district. But when I was looking at schools, I was told, oh, you should pick Edna, or you should pick Tam, or you should go to Strawberry, so I ultimately I picked Tam, but Edna would have been literally the worst choice in terms of traffic for me, going cross town through all these Clydesdale traffic. It would have been a really bad, scenario. So I wonder if we could create kind of a proximity map of, for example, Old Mill, Park, Edna, in order to balance out classes, they could pick within those 3 schools. And frankly speaking, Tam Valley is actually pretty close to Strawberry if you look at the distance driven and avoiding the traffic. So those two, like, come up with this, it's like district within the district. And so that if one school has too many or, Tam Valley gets filled out, maybe some of them could go to Strawberry. And so we have that flexibility to even out the number of kids in the class. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense. Why is she going like that?
Yeah.
No. I'm just like having an idea because it's important that we have equity in number of kids in the class. But if we stick to, then we're going to have a situation, Old Mill is always going to have 24, right? Or something that just doesn't seem very fair to me. So, maybe having that loose kind of number of schools kind of linked together to, make the classroom sizes balance a little bit more.
Trustee Katz.
I think Ellie's point is really important.
Yeah.
Because that's about equity when it comes to our community. And I think that a lot of people in our community are very privileged to be able to have a parent who stay at home and who can accommodate the schedule to be able to do that and come in the middle of the day or pay somebody to do it. And there are plenty of people in our community who cannot do that. And this has a really tangible impact on them. And I know buses were not well adopted previously prior to the pandemic. And we were on a training earlier today where somebody mentioned that their district just recently got 2 buses and they're spending $500,000 a year to help support that. And, your eyes kind of bug out when you hear numbers like that. But what are ways that we can get creative as a district to help support these families if we are not going to be changing our policy and our approach to, just with our family? Absolutely. It ended up being great with having our kids at Edna. That first year was incredibly emotional and taxing on me and my kids, mostly because they felt unsettled because they were split across schools. And we were like, our goal is to have you in the same school, and we were dealing with the wait list. And so they didn't have a place to call home at that point. And I didn't have a community to say, if I'm sick or I need help, I could not afford to work to be able to do that without pulling in some help. So how are we connecting people in our community with each other to maybe help support carpools and things that help from a climate impact, from, families feeling supported and connected when they may not have somebody next door who they can say, can you give my kid a ride, because they don't go to their neighborhood school. Sorry, just one quick thing. I guess the one thing that this comes back around to and I don't know who controls the ARs, and we talked about this, but just being able, we don't account for siblings of students being, I think we prioritize definitely programmatic needs. So if there's a special services need, that's number one. We don't prioritize siblings if they're split. I think we're in a very comfortable position right now with our schools because of declining enrollment coming out of COVID, where we're not in a situation where they're split. It addresses current families new to the district who don't enroll in round 1 may end up being split. So how do we prioritize siblings being on that wait list higher up and not get bumped down to their place in line?
Yeah.
May I interject another thought that you brought up? I think that item 3 in our most recent, it's Roman numeral 3, school assignment criteria for students new to the district with a priority order. I'd like to see some thought on that and some feedback from various stakeholder groups, because it's in what I'm hearing from parents on our board is that maybe this list, it does not meet the current needs of our community. And then I do want to emphasize that we do need to have all other stakeholders, the people that serve including our, administrative team, teachers, support staff weighing in. And I do concur that this should wait for the 25-26 school year, but we have time, lead time. I wonder if my colleagues feel the same way. We don't feel this needs to be done right now, but we do want some, we've given a lot of robust feedback, I think, and we do want to see some prioritization for 25-26.
I think for sure, but I don't want this to somehow show up in May. I want to see this on upcoming frequent, because I think there's going to be a lot of discussion. So I want us to have very ample time to have lots of discussions and feedback. So I totally am fine, as you're saying, to go 25-26, but don't want us to put on the back burner.
Right. And I am looking at the time, Trustee Yu.
So how could we get more parents engaged in participating in these surveys? Or more, it was like at the,
It was in the newsletter,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is, to the point that Dr. Kaufman made earlier, understanding the best ways to communicate and ensuring that we're using those in the most efficient ways.
Yeah.
And certainly, if we are looking at asking some additional demographic questions, some additional survey questions as part of this, also engaging other stakeholders, from throughout our district, we absolutely will do this in other ways, not only making sure that it appears in multiple newsletters, but also sending out individual blasts potentially about it, figuring out where else in the community we can share it as a link so that people have easy access to it.
what about preschool?
So we have in the past maintained some lists of preschools. We do know, through registration, other schools, we can also let families know that they should take this, provide a flyer that in the newsletter that they could download and post at their preschool or take to their sporting event. Ellie and I end up on baseball fields together all the time. So places like that where you can connect with people and they can grab their phone and connect to the survey that way in an easy way.
Because if you're looking at the current families, you're missing out the people who are going to come into the district. And that may be the more important target. I wonder if it's possible to talk to some of the preschool directors, like to get their, so that we get on their system and maybe there could be a QR code where the parents could take a survey.
We can certainly try. And I would just add that I think it is important that we continue to survey our current families as well, since we also know many families who are in preschools now may or may not end up in our schools for various reasons. So, having that balance and being able to filter results and look at things through different lenses is absolutely important.
I was just gonna say to your point earlier about sometimes not getting to the place you wanted ends up being good. Surveying the current families can also be helpful of, like, if you did not get your first choice school, how did that impact you? Maybe it was awesome, or
or wasn't.
Yeah.
Which we need to hear as well.
I don't think that we're going to get to a perfect solution no matter what, just due to the unique nature of our geographic layout and everything. But I do think that also it could have a very positive impact on our teachers as well, by if we can get a better solution maybe, or help people understand that no matter like where they are, or getting support for them, that they are going to be in the right place. Hopefully we can also reduce some of those last minute moves of kids from one school to another, because I'm sure it's very disruptive for the teachers.
That's happened.
With all the kids coming in and out at the last minute, if you need to like read up on the background of a kid, or if they have an IEP or anything, and then a week or two later, then you're having changes. Maybe we could have some really positive impact there as well, if we can even just move the needle.
Well, thank you, board. I think we've given, I hope, some thoughtful direction and a good conversation. So I appreciate your presentation, and again, it was a small sample size, but I think it spurred some really good conversation. So I appreciate the time and energy.
To be continued.
Excellent, excellent. And now we go to board operations, item H. And we're going to consider confirmation of annual organizational meeting for December 11th. And Dr. Kaufman will present this item, and it does require approval. So I'm assuming that we will be voting to approve this item.
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
So annually, we need to approve our annual organizational meeting. There's a certain amount of notice and then you have to let the county superintendent know. So that is the motion tonight. I did want to call out that there is a draft board meeting schedule just for regular meetings. I still need to try to play through what special meetings and study sessions would look like with respect to my evaluation, but also LCAP, budget development, strategic planning. And then there's also a list of committee assignments for your consideration. The BCs this week will ask you to let me know what committees you might be interested in participating in, if any. And I just want to call out that, you know, the one mandated is I'm not even seeing it here now. It's the representative for the
County.
Yeah, the county. Yes. Yep. So, the others are
FCSBA.
optional and, you know, it's a practice in Marin County to have, trustees in a number of committees. Other counties don't necessarily have that practice. So again, you know, I absolutely welcome you to attend anything. I will also be at almost everything that you're going to be at. And so my job as superintendent would of course be apprising you of information that's coming forward from any of these committees. So that's it. And I think I can either entertain questions or I will call question.
Okay, well, first, do we have any public comment on this item? Seeing no public comment. Okay, do we have board questions? Trustee Katz?
I have a question around the board meeting schedule. The June 13th, 2024 meeting is also the last day of school. Can we have that be a Wednesday meeting and do it the day before or?
I think so.
Yeah, just.
No, I think we just maintain Thursdays.
Thursday.
It's also not the last day for teachers though, right? They work the next day.
And also, I mean, I think we're just trying to get through the cadence of getting the 2 LCAP approvals. So that's generally a very short meeting, approval of LCAP and approval of budget. So it could easily go, assuming there aren't a ton of revisions of the LCAP and cap and budget from June 5th, we could easily place that on a June 12th. I don't know what graduation or if there's anything else that we would need to consider, but a promotion.
So it sounds like something to look at and see if that can be moved. Okay. I have a question as to whether there is interest from the board in a process that follows the Brown Act where there can be some consideration of the relevance of our attendance on these committees or the relevance to our board work. And just wanted to get some fellow trustee feedback on that. Do we want to keep all these committees? And if we don't, a process whereby we could provide some feedback so that if there are any committees here that we deem not relevant to our work, they could be eliminated.
What's an example?
So an example might be, for me, I am interested, you know, in just some, and I'm not sure if per the Brown Act can speak, I can speak to this now since we're at the meeting. So for example, you know, trustees going to a PTA meeting, what purpose might that serve our board work? Are we serving the PTAs? Are they getting the communication they need from this board by the other processes that we have? Is our superintendent one who might go to those meetings? And having a process by which we can evaluate and reflect before we just do the same thing in a month for another year.
I think I'd be happy to perhaps we all provide Dr. Kaufman some feedback on whether, you know, the ones that we've been attending are if we think that it's a valuable use of the committee's time as well as our time, and we can provide that feedback to her for her to collect.
Yeah, I'd say, are we also talking about individual school sites? The board attending these meetings? Or are we talking about?
So it could actually be anything, any,
Yeah.
as an example. So anything on the list.
Yeah.
To do some self-reflection and ask ourselves as a governing board member, is this a good use of board time? How is it informing our practice? If it's not, to provide some feedback. And I don't know, I would look to our superintendent for an appropriate format for doing this.
Yeah.
So I'm bringing
How
this
is it
up.
done in other districts? Like, what are some of the committees that in your practice is not very common?
Well, and I'm being new to Marin County. I think, there's a different practice in other, in other communities. I would say if we look at the role of the board in terms of, policy and direction, the district committees, I believe are, we need to filter with the lens of, what is the role of a trustee attending these for the purpose of policy and direction, vision, goals, direction, finance for our district. And, are these relevant for that work? Or is that the work of the superintendent, or at the school sites? Is that the principal's work? And I think that's the, one question that I think, comes up is, how do we, if we're all going to represent the board individually at individual school sites or in individual committees, is that information, are we on point with our, tight with our communication? And, if that's the role of the trustee instead of the principal, then, what common talking points do we need? So I think for me, one of the things I'm just observing is that, the principal's at the meeting, it's their school, we're paying them to run it. I absolutely believe that, certain types of joint forums, like I am used to having a time where the trustees have a study session with DLAC, ITAV, PTA, any of those groups where we say, okay, we want to hear from our constituents, almost like a state of the community or a state of the staff, so that there are opportunities for you to get those feedback loops, but in a policy direction and finance perspective, and really looking at it from the sense of the whole district rather than each individual site. If that makes any sense, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I get nervous about saying the correct things that represents the board's opinion sometimes at these PTA meetings. And the questions can get a little bit out of hand, I feel like, especially when it's something controversial like classroom size, and negotiations and all that, and possibly reducing the number of classrooms. I mean, so I wonder, but on the other hand, I don't want you to be overwhelmed by having to attend all these PTA meetings. So I will leave it up to you, because I feel like it's very hard to get the right message at the PTA meetings without feeling like I'm saying something wrong, I'm compromising the board or something. And so I wonder if it's, you're right, I think it might be better off leaving it to you and Lisa in some ways.
Well,
I mean, and Tam Valley would be the principal, so Lisa. I'm thinking Lisa.
I think one of the considerations is just what are appropriate conversations to have in with each group, right? As well. And I think, we can provide information, but we're really not, the purpose of our engagement in that organization isn't necessarily to defend district practices or policies. I think that's where we have this forum and you have the opportunity for public comment. And so I think we just have to be careful about how we engage and what kinds of questions, and, again, staff confidentiality. I mean, there's just so many pieces that I don't want you to be in that situation, but I also don't want to be in that situation either. I think there's a certain number of, I want to go and inform whatever happened at the last board meeting and let people know.
Exactly.
And, if there are questions I need to know about, I want to have those on hand so I can go back and answer them in the appropriate forum. But I don't want it to be a sort of, grill the superintendent or grill the trustee kind of
Yeah.
meeting, because it doesn't help the system.
Yeah, and sometimes I felt like that with the school building in a way. One of the, they were asking me some questions and I felt a little bit uncomfortable saying it. And so I think it would have, it would have been a lot better if the answers came from you or the principals.
So, trustee Cass, sorry, and then I
I
said
just
superintendent
wanted
for
to say,
direction.
as a parent in the district, and because of how we've broken things out, like I would already be on, like, no matter what, I'm going to the Edna PTA meetings. I am happy to be a participant at the middle school ones, and I like having the touch points with the community, because I do think that there is value to visibility, to hearing what's going on. Does it need to be at the same level and representing the board? And I've shared with you before, I think we've heard feedback from the community that some of the things that are presented in different sessions come out differently, because what I hear as the most important things coming out of our board meeting may not be the same thing that, Michelle or Sharon or Ellie would. So, so I do think in terms of consistency of message and what our community is hearing, I do think that would be helpful. And I think that, probably just us continuing to remember that part of our role is also being a liaison to the community, and finding those touch points, whether it's as a parent at the PTA or something else, that we continue to invest in those.
Trustee Nakatani?
Oh, I was just gonna second what Ellie said. I think we should communicate directly to Elizabeth with some specific questions to us. We type our responses and answers and let her collate and direct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we have so the process here, can you provide us kind of what you heard?
Yes.
Summary.
So tomorrow you'll receive a BC, and if it helps me remember, we can amend that BC to right now it indicates asking you to let us know what committees you might be interested in participating in. I think we can amend it to include, what questions do you have? What parameters should we be considering when we're looking at committee participation as trustees? I think there's a whole different, when you're there as a parent, you're there as a parent. I mean, and you obviously you can't take you're always a trustee, right? But in that case, you're representing yourself. You're not representing the board, which, is potentially an easier way for us to maintain uniformity of our messaging from the dais to the site. So again, I'll think of something. We'll think of something, right? Yeah, for sure.
I want you to do whatever is best practice. I want you to follow, in your opinion, because I don't like, this is beyond my, I rely upon you.
Very good. Okay, thank you. And I'm glad we had this conversation. Thank you for providing us that opportunity. All right, so now we are on to future board items. We have our governance calendar, and this is the time when trustees can bring forth any board item for board discussion, which we vote on to add to the calendar. Seeing no response on that, we'll move on to J, board reports. This is an opportunity for board members to share what they have been doing in their liaison work for the school district. Trustee Katz, would you like to begin?
I am trying to remember all the things. that
Okay,
happened.
I'll start.
Please.
I'll start by saying that I did attend a Park School PTA meeting, and in what I see as my capacity there as a liaison member, not a voting committee member, answered questions about Measure G and just reconnected, which is great. And look forward to going to the coffee tomorrow morning at 8:30, because that is how I get the pulse of my school. And did some governance training and attended the Measure G meeting, which I thought was very informative, to just be there as a observer and will get there as soon as I can on Monday for the Monday next meeting. Thank you for reminding me, Trustee Nakatani.
I'll just go. I don't have, I mean, I feel like we've just had meeting after meeting after meeting, so I don't have anything terribly new besides master and governance training today about finance. Learned a few things. And yeah, I will be at the community input meetings to listen for, as long as my schedule allows.
I'll just share that we had a traffic meeting with Strawberry Point community and Stephanie Moulton Peters and one of the Marin Public Works people. And I mean, it was great. And Dr. Kaufman came and Miss Russell. There are just so many issues. Parents really showed up. They were very clear with their frustration with the county and their expectation that the county needs to address. I mean, Dr. Kaufman, I want to steal your words. She said it's the worst or like the most unsafe area of crossing that she's seen at all of her school sites throughout her career. So it really is a high issue and concern. We disappointed to have the county try to push costs onto the district. I mean, literally try to say the district kiddo PTA should pay for the crossing guard. That was really just shocking. And Dr. Kaufman, I think, did a nice job of really pointing out that the county needs to manage county roads and we are responsible for educating our kids. So it was a good discussion. I think we are continuing to make progress. They are planning on coming back at the beginning of the year with proposals for safety. But, we'll see. And I think as a district, we need to continue to really stay on them because these are our children that are in harm's way because of county inaction. So that's really my key report.
I'm just so glad that you brought the issue up and have been pushing that, and just thank you for your work around that.
I mean, of course, I think, we talk about all the proximity and it's like, it doesn't matter how close you are if you can't get to school safely.
So takes a village, Tam Valley PTA meeting, the board training, masters in governance. I have to say, I just feel more and more attend these sessions, and we have breakout sessions that we are very fortunate to be in Mill Valley School District. I mean, for example, today I was listening to one district whose board members never show up to the meeting, and out of the 5, there's a couple, husband and wife on the same board blocking everything. One never shows up. And we have districts where, they're having to close schools and you're just reversed from, just emerged from receivership and gangs and I'm listening to, huge immigrant population and, it just boggles my mind how fortunate and lucky we are. I'm very grateful.
So thank you for giving me the moment to collect my thoughts. Also connected with ITEV with their board meeting, was really excited to finally get the chance to be at a middle school PTA meeting as an attendee and just hear about what's happening there, and just really grateful to be part of this middle school community. Edna and Old Mill, and I think all of our schools right now are doing a lot of really celebratory things and community gatherings, which I just love. So Edna had movie night. Old Mill just had their lapathon. I am sad I was not able to make it, but I am glad for them that they actually had a sunny day this year versus the rain that they got last year. Although I think those kids will run no matter what the weather. And have book fair coming up at Etna this coming week. So I think just seeing the ways that our community comes together and we celebrate our kids and, regardless of what neighborhood we live in, at our school sites, we are so close knit. And so it's been really fun to be part of that. Excited to continue that community celebration.
Wonderful. And I do hear, trustee you, that you are knee deep also in your book fair at Tam Valley. So I think you
Yes.
probably just forgot you've,
When is yours?
Ours is a week before Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Which
Okay.
is kind of like not great because that's the, that's the shortened day. So we'll see how that goes.
So I'm co-chairing for ours that we're doing setup tomorrow morning. So
Fun.
I'll let you know how everything goes with Scholastic. Excellent.
Yeah, this
Trustee-
last
oh.
year was horrible. We didn't get books. We got toys.
Wow.
Trustee
Just a
Nakatani.
community question. The DEI event is next Wednesday,
Wednesday.
the 8th? Just,
Eight,
okay.
5 to 7, I believe.
Okay. Seven
Yeah, I
one.
won't be able to.
Okay.
I will be there. I'm excited for it.
So the 6th is the community meeting.
Yes. Six is Measure G
seventh-
Community
yeah.
Outreach, seventh is Kiddo Board Meeting, and eighth
is-
is DEI
I don't have a
Harvest.
kiddo board meeting, so that's okay.
Wow.
And I am I'll send a BC about participating in the community meetings, because I think I might have a little cautionary tale when 2 or more or more than 2 attend. So yeah. So anyway, I have some
Okay.
thoughts, but
Yeah,
that's
I-
also in a BC that you'll get tomorrow.
So is it
Very
ju-
good.
avoid each other if we see one another?
Not more than 2 at a meeting.
But I
Yeah.
thought in our board, in our brand act training, we could attend if we don't engage.
If we don't
Yeah.
talk, I'm gonna preview the BC. I'm gonna preview the BC. Because that was my understanding too. I asked Roman I checked with Roman, and he's like, no, it's probably better, again, perception being part of it, but the reality, if anyone participates, then it becomes a de facto meeting. But I'm asking him to give me the citation, because I don't know specifically like what, is it 3 or more? And if if we anticipate that people are gonna come regularly, that triggers it, or what? So I don't know the nuance.
I think, and that would be helpful, because especially with the 3 of us as parents of current kids
Right.
here, like, I assume
You
as
can attend as a
parents,
parent, absolutely.
totally fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can take mine. Yeah, I don't-
And
I
we'll
don't-
also have it, we will have it recorded as well. So yeah, but that parent trustee line, when 3 parent trustees are more to come, but we might want to be a little careful on Monday night.
Yeah.
And that'll be
Okay.
having answers.
Thank you,
Let's
thank
wear
you.
your Halloween
We have
costume. Just kidding.
event, we can't be together.
You can be together.
A BC is coming. All right, and with that, I think it's time to adjourn our meeting
Yes.
at 8:03 PM. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, our teacher partners, for staying the duration. Thank you so much.
So we can't be together at community, or we cannot more than